Hello everyone, I hope that you're fine. This is the correction of the work on Houska and her TED conference. So let's meet her. Who is she? So she was born in Canada and she belongs to the Conchinchina First Nations. Then she moved to the US where she became a lawyer and in Washington. And then today she is a triple attorney who is defending the rights of the different members of the different native tribes in the US. She is really proud of being a Democrat and especially having been engaged in the political campaign of Bernie Sanders. She is an activist and she is extremely involved in protests for environmental justice, such as today she is involved in the protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. She was engaged also in the protest against the Keystone XL pipeline. And so for all this, she received an award, the Awesome Woman Award. So there are different reasons, but mostly because she's an activist and she seeks justice for her people. She doesn't give up even after being arrested in very violent conditions. So, as a consequence, she organizes rallies, campaigns, demonstrations to promote her cause. She is extremely convinced, extremely determined, and she can stand firm against powerful corporation and even against the government. And as a lawyer, she uses her legal knowledge to improve the life of Native Americans. That's why she received this award to pay a tribute to her action. Now, let's move to the TED conference, so the first part of her conference. She first presents herself as a product of the genocide survival, which is a very strong definition of her identity. She uses the word genocide, which is really powerful and which means the murder of a whole group of people and a whole nation, so in this case the different native nations, killing all a group. So as a survivor, she's one of the rare who has survived, and as she's rare, as there are not a lot of people like her, she has a responsibility. She's really serious about this responsibility, and this is a kind of burden because she has to encourage the rebirth of her culture, and she wants people to see them so that they can step out of the shadow. So, in this video, she lists the different problems that the Native American had to face in the past. So we saw that in the class, but just to remind you, so she says that they were victim of oppression. So as they were a minority, they were not visible. The federal government didn't see them and denied their right. They were completely excluded from the mainstream society and completely isolated. And the most important is that the people didn't understand their culture and didn't want to understand their identity because they were different. And the other people didn't want to face this unknown. She also lists the different problems that they have to face today, and we see that there are some parallels that we can draw. They are today still victims of racism and prejudices. They are still not viewed and considered as real persons or as full citizens. That's why the government and people feel they are legitimate to deprive them of their basic rights, such as health and education. They are sometimes even considered as weak, pathetic persons who are unable to manage their own affairs. And she also talks about global warming and how they are victim of climate change, of fossil fuel industry, and they are even pushed away from their lands because of sea level rise. So she states that they are more vulnerable than other people. She also referred to the issue of murder and rape of women, a situation and an issue which is not dealt with and taken seriously by the government. They are still victims of police violence, and especially in the case of the protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And if we refer to the Constitution, there is an amendment which says that everyone is equal and should be protected by the law. So we can say and we can conclude that the Equal Protection Act is not respected in the case of Native American. And she also refers to the fact that in school there is nothing which is taught in schools, in school books, about their history, as if their history was not part of the national history. And if you want, you can talk about this to your assistant, because she told me that she doesn't know anything about Native American history, and she is American. So we can draw a parallel between the past and the present. As you can see, there are some repetitions of the same issues. They are still victims of oppression, still victims of violence, still victims of prejudices, as during the colonial time and the US expansion to the west. In the case of the Dakota Access Pipeline, they are even pushed away from their lands by the federal government, and it can thus remind us of the different acts that the government voted to steal the Native American lands and confine them in reservation, like the Indian Removal Act and the Indian Appropriation Act. So, why did she decide to deliver such a speech at a TED conference? So she wants to globally make people aware of their history, but especially she wants to make people aware of the impact on the lives of Native American, the impact of today government, so the impact of the acts of and the actions of the government the federal government against them. She wants to make people aware that these acts, these actions have human cost, and that that history still needs to be written. Their fight is not over, and the federal government still needs to restore the wrongs that have been done and that are done today to the natives. That's it for today. Okay, and see you soon.